Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jesus and a Dream podcast, where we believe with Jesus and a Dream, anything is possible, nothing is impossible, and the possibilities are endless. I'm Caleb, this is Zach.
Hello everyone.
And we want you to enjoy life and build God's kingdom. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, would you do us a favor and like and subscribe? If you're listening anywhere else to this podcast, would you leave us a review? It helps us out, and we want to help more people and more places enjoy life and build God's kingdom.
So Caleb, I was thinking about some stuff.
What were you thinking about, Zach?
I think we should start a
jewelry business.
Oh, hey, Kelsie Freitag, owner
idea.
of LinkedxKelsie. I didn't see you there. Welcome to the Jesus and a Dream podcast. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
It's so good to have you down here. Could you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yes. My name's Kelsie, and I live in Lakeville, Minnesota. I am married to my husband, Ben. We've been married for a little over 9 years. And we have one son, and he is almost 22 months.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about just like your career from when you graduated college? Just give us a little bit of a background of what you've been up to.
Sure. So I went to North Central University, studied music there. And, just like a lot of people, sometimes you don't necessarily go into the career that you went to school for, which was kind of my case. I got married. Me and my husband got married shortly after we graduated, and we were actually on staff at a church for 7 years. We did youth ministry, and my husband was executive pastor and a campus pastor, and learned so many cool things. And I actually led worship there while I was there. So that was like my little I'm using my degree here, which is always good, which I loved. And later my brother Taylor joined on staff, so we led together, which was
Shout out Taylor Marshall.
Oh,
He's on the podcast.
Yes. So super special time for us to be able to work and lead together. And I learned a lot from him, and he's 7 years younger than me. So most people don't know that. We're actually 7 years apart. Doesn't look like it, but yes. So yeah. Kind of had that. About a year after I was married, I just had kind of a stirring to get into wedding planning. I was working at a wedding shop at the time on the side. And so I just started on my own, started doing people I know. I did their weddings, would plan for church weddings, anyone that was getting married at the church, and then got connected to a couple that were mom and daughter, and they were opening a barn venue. And so they asked me to be their coordinator. So I started from the ground up with them, which is so cool. And so I've been there now for 6 years. I've done 6 seasons now with them. So that's been kind of where I've been at with my business, and it's been awesome. It's been really cool.
That's really cool. But now you have a new dream.
Yes.
And you're just starting out on there. And so why don't you tell us about what it is, what you do, and maybe just a little bit of how you started it and how you got here.
Yeah. So about 6 months ago, so becoming a mom changed so many things, and I was just trying to think about what was next in this year for me. I felt a shift. I felt like the Lord was shifting passion and where I was supposed to be putting just my time. And so I didn't know what that was going to look like. And about 6 months ago, I was just on social media and saw this trend that was kind of becoming big on Instagram and TikTok and all those things that you see trends start from. And one of them was called permanent jewelry. And I saw someone getting it done, and I said, oh, that's so cool. I would love to get that done. So I researched to see if anyone in Minneapolis or Minnesota was doing it. And there was one, I found 1 or 2 people doing it, and they were doing it at a price point that just wasn't as affordable for me to do it. So I decided not to do it. But then I started seeing other people started in other states, became really big in Utah, Colorado, Texas, New York. And some of those people were doing it at more an affordable rate. And I was like, that is so cool. I wish someone was doing that here. And I just feel like the Lord said, why not you? And it had been a really, really long time since I felt like the Lord spoke to me and gave me a passion to start something new that isn't I don't have a natural entrepreneur spirit. And I've learned a lot of that from my husband, which I've been really thankful for. But I was super intimidated by that at first. And I was just like, okay, let's just see if in a few weeks I still feel the same way. And it's not just a random thought. So yeah, a few weeks went by and I was still kind of really interested in starting up something new for permanent jewelry. And yeah, just talked to my husband about it. He got on board, started sharing with a couple of really close friends, and later shared with my family. And everyone was super encouraging and positive, and a lot of them hadn't even heard of it yet. And so I was like trying to see, will I catch this wave before it becomes really big here? And maybe the timing is just really right. And it has just been cool. I launched a week ago today, and it has been amazing. It was such a trial and error. I had to teach everything, learn everything on my own. But the Lord's been faithful, and he's just been, anytime I've been discouraged, he's come through and shown me like, you can do it. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on launching your new business. Can you explain to us what is permanent jewelry?
Yes, I know. A lot of people think it's like, yeah, there's a lot of different speculations you can think of when you hear the word permanent, and maybe a little fear.
It's like in your skin.
Yeah, that honestly when, yeah.
Or is it like a tattooed ring or something?
No, trust me, I've had all of the questions. Honestly, my dad, when he was explaining to a couple people, probably wasn't using the right terminology at first. And so people were assuming it was like attached to you. So I was like quickly reassuring that, no, it is not. You can easily cut it off with scissors. No, but it's honestly like a less permanent version of a tattoo, which is kind of fun. It's chain link jewelry, gold filled, silver, and it's just welded together. So there's no chain, no clasp. It's like an infinite piece of jewelry. And so you keep it on all the time. It doesn't tarnish, doesn't fade. And it can represent something, which we can talk about a little later too, but it can symbolize something super significant, or it can just be something fun. Right now, my focus is on women's jewelry, but I am hoping to launch men's in like later winter in the spring. But really, I just want to let people feel like they feel great and they feel special, and it makes them feel good, and it's effortless. They don't have to think about it. It's just always on. And so that's kind of what it is. And I do it out of my home. It takes like 10, 20 minutes, and it's customizable so they can choose whatever chain. I have multiple chains that they can choose from. And then I fit it to them, custom fit it. I have pendants and charms they can add or whatever. But yeah. And so it just stays on, but you can cut it off if you want to. You don't have to really keep it on all the time.
No, that's really cool. And I love that as an innovative idea. And that's cool that you are catching something in its inception, I guess you could say, and that it's fairly new. And that's really cool. And I love to see that. Could you share just a little bit of, like you said, and you said this already, but you were kind of talking to us about the process that you're not maybe naturally gifted as like a visionary or as a dreamer, but the Lord invited you into this process. Yeah. And so could you maybe speak to that a little bit of like what that felt like? Because I think for a lot of people, they might be listening and go like, like Caleb and Zach, like they're visionaries, they're dreamers. I'm just not like that. But I do believe like God does have passions for me and dreams for me. And so could you just speak a little bit to that process, and then maybe also just tell a little more of the story of like those divine provisions that like you shared a story of like a friend came to visit and that type of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, I feel like when the Lord speaks to you with anything in your life, I think oftentimes we wonder like, okay, is this just me, or is this the Holy Spirit speaking to me and showing me maybe something new? And so yeah, just kind of waited and prayed on it for a little bit, and really felt like, okay, this passion, is growing and it's not going away. And I felt that was very different for me. Oftentimes I could maybe get excited about something and then later be like, oh yeah, that I'm not interested anymore, or, oh yeah, that was a good idea, but I just don't think I could do it. And instead of me feeling like I don't think I could do that, I just kept getting inspired. And every day I would think of a new reason why I should do it, or how this would be super significant and special for other people. And so I just acted on that and just took a step at a time and was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do a little research. What would it look like to start this? What's the investment part of it? Where would I do this? Asking myself all the questions. And as I would ask a question, a new thought of, I could do it here. This is where I would literally, okay, this is like a little insider scoop, but I would just go on social media where I saw these people doing it, and I would reach out to them, and I wouldn't get a response back, but I would watch their pictures and videos like till like 2 a.m. and being like, what tools are they using? What's working for them? By just researching and watching, I would literally like search online and like guess maybe what that item was called. And like, I found it. And then I would like all of a sudden find all the tools that I saw them using, and like little things like that. But I knew that the Lord was showing me where I needed to go, where I needed to look, and how I needed to do this. And so bought all the materials, did trial and error, did it on my family. I started with them. They're great guinea pigs of like, hey, what do you think about this? Does it work for you? Learned what worked, what didn't. And it was still like, so I'm actually welding, metal together, and which I had no experience, and I had to learn all of this, So I was about to do my photo shoot launch like day. And this was like a month and a half ago. And I was doing it for a couple of family friends that were in town visiting us, and they knew I was about to start it. I said, sure, like I'd love to do it for you. Even though I haven't launched yet. And I was really nervous because there was a couple trial and error things that were kind of just feeling like errors. Things were not working fully, and I didn't have a full confidence that like I could go into tomorrow's photo shoot and be like, this is my business. I can do this. I was a little apprehensive, and it was crazy because the friend that came over to get it done had brought her husband, and I didn't know he was coming. And I also had completely forgot that his profession was a welder. And like my dad was there, and he's like, well, you should just ask him. He probably knows. I mean, he hasn't probably done this type of welding, and he literally showed me exactly what I was doing wrong, what I needed to fix. And all of a sudden I did it, and I'm like, it worked. What I couldn't figure out like totally worked. And I just felt like this weight was lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I could walk into the next business day with confidence and be like, I can do this. And the Lord's got me, and I don't have to fear. And ever since that day, it's just been amazing, and it's lined up, and I've been able to just do things that I didn't think I could do because I was fearful of starting my own business. And once I took that step, I've just seen it all line up. So yeah.
I think that's super awesome. And can we maybe talk just a little bit more on how your mindset shifted now looking back? And like, I think God prepares us a lot of ways. Do you have any examples of maybe from your past work experience, not in the jewelry area?
Yeah.
Has there been anything from those places? Like you said, you're part of a church and also wedding coordinating.
Yeah.
Has there been anything from those that have been like invaluable experience that you didn't think applied to what you do now, but you're like, oh, I've learned like, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming there's so much just with weddings that you're like, oh, I understand the value of jewelry to people and stuff like that. So yeah, has there been any of those things where you're like, okay, if I jumped straight into this business without that experience, like, would it be the same? And I don't think it would, but
no,
yeah.
Totally not. I think life experience just makes anything that you do next help tremendously. But I've seen, I think with weddings, I'll say with weddings at least, I've seen how significant things can represent to people. That's going to be a big part of this jewelry. Is it's going to like, it's going to be a memory for someone. It may be a representation of someone. I am actually part of what I'm doing with jewelry is kind of marketing it in a sense for like bridal parties. Like if it's something you want to do on your wedding day to represent, like, this is what my bridal party is wearing, as that represent, that'll be connected to it. So yes, in weddings, I've been able to kind of now connect it with jewelry business. But I think in terms of just kind of how you learn and grow, I kind of had to create my own system with wedding planning. Like I had to create my own LLC business. I had to figure out how I was going to start it, grow. And that was like a 6-year process. So you see how much it was when you're starting on your very first wedding on your own, to then you're part of a group venue, and then you're building, packages of business for them to choose from. And you're like, then you're doing networking and you're connecting with bride and grooms and all of that stuff. I just feel like all of that is applying to now where I'm really starting from a ground level, using that experience to be able to like launch something that is going to be still really meaningful. I think a wedding day is like one of the most meaningful days. And I also think if you go back into ministry, I want this to be another form of ministry. And I always want any job that I'm doing to be a form of ministry. When we were no longer as like on a staff position, that was a big thing that we were asking God, like, Lord, if we're not going to be in another staff paid position, how can we use what we're going to be doing next to, ultimately give you glory, but then to give back, to use our resources and our finances for the church. And so to see how He's orchestrated that, it has been so cool. And that's like one of our biggest things, is we are blessed to be a blessing. And so with this ministry, my new business, I just want that to be just how I've had everything else. I want it to be, how can I give God the glory through this? And I've already started to see that in ways I wasn't expecting. And so I'm just excited to have it be another form of ministry in my life.
That's really cool. Something that I would like to hit on, and you kind of just mentioned it right there, is that you didn't even know permanent jewelry existed like a year ago, right? This is something totally new to your life. Yeah, we can look back and go like, okay, but like there are things that like led me here. And I just like using the illustration of, I think our passions are breadcrumbs to our destiny. Like the Lord has a place that He has intended for all of us to go. No matter what you're passionate about, no matter what your background is, no matter what your story is like, God is weaving a perfect story. And so wherever you're going next, like where you've been before, is a perfect like step to get there.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like Linked by Kelsie, like My Mountain, where we're going to feel most at home maybe sometimes doesn't even exist even in the world, or at least in our current understanding of the world. And so you discovered this, like I had to create My Mountain in order to find these places that like felt like home. And so I just want you maybe to speak to, like you just talked about, you're now starting to see like why this matters, and more than just like, okay, this is jewelry and like this is symbol, but you're starting to see the Lord move like through this thing that some people might look like and go like, it's just jewelry. What does that have to do with the kingdom of God? And so could you tell us, what does jewelry have to do with the kingdom of God?
Totally. When I felt like this could be a good idea, I was looking at it first as a trend base of like, this could be something that'd be cool to do here. I felt like every day I was talking about how I felt like there was new inspiration coming. A lot of those things were why people would want this, and honestly, not just to be like, what are ways so I can make more money? It was really just coming as like, my husband's grandpa had just passed away 6 months before that. And I really felt like something like they had been talking about doing tattoos, and some wanted to do it and some didn't. And I was just like, all of us could totally do this. And that was just something that came to me. And I was like, we could all do this in remembrance of him. And that was my first group that did it, was Ben's grandma came into town and all of the girls and her did it in memory of him, which was just so cool. So that was like one of the reasons I found of significance. And another was I've had a couple friends do it once they found out they were having a baby. And that was like to signify that. And then, there's just been all of these things that have been like really cool. It's more than just like, I just want to wear this. It's been a reminder for them. And the day I launched, I had a woman reach out to me, and I was amazed at all the connections that were coming to me from just people sharing from my Instagram launch day. I didn't know what to expect from that, but a woman had reached out to me later in the evening on the day that I launched and I didn't know who she was. She had found me through a mutual friend, and she had said that she was asking if I was available like in like 10 days to do an event at her house, because she was hosting she was launching her own ministry for widows that have lost their husbands. And she wanted to pay for me to come and create a piece of jewelry for each woman that was going to be at this event. She doesn't even know who these women were going to be. But she felt like she knew that right now in their life, they have nothing permanent to stand on, and that's how they feel. And she wants to provide something permanent for them. And I mean, when she told me this on the phone, I almost started crying right there and then, because it was something that I would have never expected to come out of this. And, my prayer is that ministry flows from it, but I don't know what that's going to look like or how, but I know the Lord is going to use it. And so just even in the very first day for that to come about, I mean, I canceled any other plans I had. I knew that I was supposed to be there for this. And that's on this Thursday, which I'm just super excited about. So I can't really share how it went because I haven't been there yet. But I just told her, I was like, isn't it amazing how the Lord works? Like, you didn't know I was going to be a business until today. I didn't know you had that thing going on next week. And here she's going to bless these women who are going through probably one of the hardest seasons of their life. And I just hope that I can bring a little bit of joy that night to them. And I'm so excited because I just feel like I don't know where they are in their walk of life. I don't know, but I'm just going to be a vessel and see what the Lord does. So, yeah.
I think that's awesome, because a lot of times, and this was like our conversation on a previous podcast about futsal, is it's like, how does, why does that matter? Right? Like, why does futsal matter? Yeah. And it was like, because him doing that builds the kingdom of God. And then you're probably asked, like you said in the very beginning, you're like, is this just a trend thing?
Yeah.
Like, I hope it's like, I'm going to wait and see, because I don't want to just jump on something that feels like a trend. And then it's like, oh, we're just here to make some side income, which is like all that anyone talks about right now is like, jump on trends, make side income. And you're like, no, I want to do something that like builds the kingdom of God. And like you're saying, if I'm not on staff, then like, where else should my time go?
Yeah.
If I'm not staff at a church building God's kingdom in that sense, like, where can I go to do this? And I think that's really cool that like day one was like, hey, your first day in business, like you are going to build God's kingdom.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, you are going to do things for people that do matter. And it's not like your first, day in business was, something else where some kids were like, oh, this is cool. Like, I don't know, I just wanted something cool. This is fun. Thanks.
Yeah, totally.
Like, no, like these things. And now you have something from day one that you can look back on and like, no, this is good. Like, even if it's just for day one, we've already like succeeded the goal of we're building God's kingdom here. So I think that's super cool.
100%.
But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I want to talk about how, again, along this train of thought of anything could happen and that's a good thing. Like I love to say that phrase because I think sometimes we think about the future and our minds will just naturally go like the negative route with like our imagination.
Oh,
it's
yes.
Like, if the unknown is happening,
sure.
I think it's just a natural human thing. I don't think like when we don't know what's about to happen next, our minds automatically go to chaos, where like God is like, no, like there is an order. That's why we have a hope for the futures, because God is in control, right? And so I would just love if you could speak to, like, I mean, you've illustrated it with these stories of like, one, you didn't know what permanent jewelry was like a year ago, and you've been an adult for a while now. You didn't know this lady existed or this ministry existed, but now you do. And now your story is being molded in the unknown, where like I think our story in some seasons is molded in this of like, I have a plan, or I have some stability, or I have some security that does also come from the Lord. But then there's also seasons of our life where it's like, I literally don't know what I'm about to do with these tools that I'm going to order that I found Googling.
Yep.
But I just know that I need to do. And so could you maybe just like encourage people that are like, they're getting the steps one at a time.
Yes.
But they don't even know like how to weld.
Yeah.
Could you just like speak to that a little bit, and maybe just encourage and inspire people who are going like, it feels unknown, but I don't want it to be chaotic.
Yes. It feels daunting. And I think I've probably used that word more the last 3 months than I've ever in my vocabulary used it, because I was fearful. And like I said earlier, just it's the unknown, and taking each step felt very like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I can, like I said too, I can tend to look at the negative in situations, and that's something I constantly have to pray for over my heart and my mind, is like, Lord, let my mind not go there, because that's what in my flesh I naturally do, is go to the negative response, and like, it's not worth it. And so prayer is such a key thing to any new life change that you feel like the Lord's telling you to step into, and you're not sure if that's really what you should be doing. But yeah, I just want to encourage, like, take that step and just trust the Lord. I feel like trusting the Lord has been it should be everybody's life motto, but for sure these last 3 years, it's been huge. And he has been faithful every time. I'm like, Lord, I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't understand. And why is this happening? And I feel like I did take a step forward, and it doesn't feel like I took a step forward. But if I have my trust in him, he is faithful, and he shows up, and there's always fruit at the end. There's always fruit. And so I'm just trying to live in that fruitful season now that I've come out of the like, okay, is this the right thing? I don't know. And yeah, that's it.
Can I just ask we kind of hinted at this, but maybe we can go more specifically, more detail, but what is your attitude in those prayers? Is it like, God, I don't know what's going on. Like, just point me in a direction, or since you have more of a direction, or just kind of like, what's the attitude? Because I feel like our attitudes when we pray is just so huge, because it just is like, I don't know, there's a lot of different attitudes you can have in a time of uncertainty. You could be like angry, like, God, which way am I supposed to go? Why am I here? Or can you comment on that one at all?
Kind of like what you said, like, what has past experience kind of prepared you for this? I think my past experiences, which could be a totally another story, have changed the way I pray and trust God in situations. And so when I feel unsure or don't know what to do, my attitude in prayer has really just been, I just trust him. And again, that's because of things I've already walked through, but I just know that his ways are so much greater than mine, and his timing is perfect. And in times when I thought it wasn't perfect, I learned by the end that it was. And so I have been living, at least in these last couple of years, in my prayer life, like, Lord, if this isn't supposed to happen, I trust that it's not supposed to happen. So shut the door, like really just shut the door in this opportunity, because I don't want to be walking in anywhere that you're not there and you're not walking with me. And so that's kind of it. It just comes back to trust. And that has been what my prayer language has been. And just my hope is in him. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it's just so true. And it doesn't mean I'm not walking through hard things now, even after I feel like, wow, such a successful like launch. I mean, to be honest, the week of my launch was probably the hardest week I've had in a very long time. Had a relative pass away this last week. We own 3 homes in Hurricane Ian that hit right through those 3 homes. I mean, like, there is still trial amidst a really joyful, fruitful area of my life. But I was even able to look at last week and be like, God, I trust you in all of this because I've seen you come through in this area. And so even though I don't know what's going to happen in this area with finances or properties that I own or family situations, I just know that when I'm in my time with you and I am giving what I think is the best that I can do, and I've seen you work through that. And so, yeah, it comes back to trust. Yeah.
That's really good. And that is the whole, my mountain mentality is when you follow the Lord wholeheartedly, your attitude can be one of confidence in him, but also in yourself in whatever situation. And so I think the Lord uses different areas of our lives, and like, because it is our life, like they're not separated, but I think sometimes we separate them in our mind of like, well, this is my business, this is my family, this is my passion or whatever, this is my ministry. And the Lord is like, no, like you're a complete person. Like, you give one thing to me, I'm going to use that like throughout your entire life with, maybe it's just in your faithfulness to me and like developing that wholehearted following after the Lord. And I really believe that when we come to that place, that is where we can go, okay, give me my mountain. Like, Lord, like I had 3 properties destroyed by a hurricane. Like, that's okay. Like, I trust in you. And I do really believe that gets easier the more you trust him.
Yes, totally. Really, because the first few times we've gone through really hard things, it's definitely not as easy. And I do think he gives us grace, and then the peace that comes with hard times overflows into other areas. And I feel like, like I was saying, because I felt like I was trusting, using so much emphasis on trust, I felt like because of that, I was able to have peace walking through last week. Even though I was like frustrated, things were not going right, there was a lot of stress involved, I ultimately in my spirit had peace. And that's what helps you get through the next thing that's going to come that's hard, is because you walked through the previous trial. So, yeah.
That's really good. And I think before we close here, I think when we say enjoy life, because that is something that we value so much at Jesus in a Dream, I think I just want to clarify that you can be doing something that you love and hard things can still be happening around it or even like within it. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you have to enjoy it like any less. And I think I just want to make the distinction right now. I don't think we've ever done this before on the podcast, that the reason that we can say we want you to enjoy life 100% of the time is because there is a difference. Like when you follow the Lord wholeheartedly and trust in him, you're allowed to enjoy life even when the hard things are happening, even when you're frustrated, even when you're stressed out. Joy is a fruit of the Spirit that will manifest if you are living by the Spirit. And that's a promise in Galatians 6. And I think the difference is like when you're doing it in your own strength and not according to the promises and the principles of God, that the opposite is also true, that the stress of your property and your relationships and your family and all that stuff can bleed even into what you're passionate about, and it can rob your joy there
totally
as well. I just spit all over.
You're good.
But I think that is such an important like point to make, is that like just because you're enjoying life doesn't mean hard things aren't happening. But I just think of David in this situation where he goes like, I killed the lion, I killed the bear, this giant is no different. And it allows us to look at the bigger challenges in life and go like, okay, I have this peace. Okay, I have this joy. Okay, I have this security and this trust in the Lord because I followed him before and because I know that he's faithful. And when you know that God is faithful, life becomes a lot less like serious and like daunting. Like the word that you're using is like, the giant is still 9 feet tall. It didn't change that reality, but the reality is like, oh, but my God doesn't care that he's 9 feet tall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
I want to jump in here and say too, like, I think that's really cool how you said, like, it's stressful and it's difficult, but I feel peace in my spirit. And I think that is the one thing, I don't know, just in my own life, like just observing life around me, you see how, and this is evident to all people, and you like compare like people who have everything and people who have nothing, you know, and it's like, you look at, and it's like, yeah, the John Bellion lyric, why do millionaires still kill themselves? You know, and it's like,
FYI, I grew up with him, John Bellion.
are you serious? Okay.
Okay, wait a second. Pause.
John Bellion's
Sorry,
my
not
hero.
to like totally ruin.
What do you mean
great
you grew
moment
up
there.
with him?
John Bellion is my hero. So.
Yeah, tell us this story real fast.
Okay, for a very short period of time, so it's just kind of my little claim to fame. But he grew up on Long Island, and that's where I grew up. And when we moved there, when I was in 3rd grade, his family was, we were at the same Christian school, same church. So we still have like mutual friends to this day. He switched schools, but grew up in the same area for our whole,
That means my Kevin Bacon ratio is now 1 away from John Bellion, and that makes me so happy.
We weren't like close by any means.
It doesn't matter.
but
You still know it.
We do know. Yeah. It's
That's
just
cool.
really cool. So when he like blew up, I was like, what in the world? I didn't even know he was into music now.
Maybe
so.
we can have him on the podcast.
Oh my
John
gosh.
Bellion, if you hear this, we've got a spot
Come
for you.
on down. Come on down.
Okay, finish your point because we're almost out of time.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think that's awesome when you talk about like the peace you have, because I mean, that's the one thing like people talk about is when you say, there's like the saying of like, oh, but your attitude is the one thing people can't take away from you.
Yeah.
And it's like, but at the same time, like if that's a really negative spirit, like it almost feels like that's the one thing you can't change. Like if things are going wrong and all you feel is just like this anxiety so deep inside you that you're like, everything's going right, but I'm deeply unhappy.
Yeah.
And I cannot figure out what to do about this. Like that is the difference between following Christ and not
100%.
in just everything in life. And it's not just like I go to church on Sunday. It's like with all of these things happening in everybody's life, when it's like, oh, it feels like things are falling apart, there's a peace there. And it's like, you don't really understand what that looks like until you go through something difficult. And then you're like, okay, no, the peace is staying there. And I think that is so huge because, that's just like the difference between, I don't know, you're a successful successful person who's not a Christian and a successful person who is like, I think if you were to put them both in a room and sit down and say, hey, at the end of the night when you go to bed, are you happy?
Yeah.
And they might be, but I think it's also like, but is it that piece, that same piece, if I could write it down on a piece of paper and like illustrate all the points that how I feel, like, do you feel that same way? And I probably a no. So
Right. And I say this all the time, but I don't know how people do it without Jesus, because he is our foundation and it always comes back to him. And like, it's just like what you said, like it's a piece that you can't explain. And it's because as humans, without him, it's not possible. And so I just think I'm just so thankful for that, because if I even faced a week like I did last week and I didn't have the hope of Jesus and knowing the reassurance that he gives me, I would be like a mess, and so we're nothing without him.
And the question, I don't know, there's been times in my life, I know we're getting to the end of the time, but like there's times in my life where you feel that like deep unrest and that deep, and you're just like, like I don't have the power to change these things, and I want to change them. And suddenly it's like, what price would I put to attain that peace, right? Like if I could just go out and like buy it, how much money would you put on? Because suddenly it's like, I don't care about anything else. I just want to like be able to sleep at night. And like there's been times in my life where just like things are so stressful that you're just like, I can't even think or look at anything in my world without this being there somewhere, just like creating like unrest and anxiety. And you're like, what could I do to achieve this? And then I think about like, there are people who live in that like all the time. And that just breaks my heart, because it's like, I know that like, okay, all I have to do is just give these things to Jesus, like give these things to God. And it's like, Lord, take these off my plate. It's like, I can't handle this. And there is a peace that comes with that. And it's like, that's my little preaching moment. I don't know how people can deal with life without Jesus. So
100%.
And that's why what we do matters. And that's why I think we are passionate about using our Monday through Saturday to live lives that bring peace into situations that it isn't otherwise. And so, Kelsie, to wrap up, What are you excited about? And maybe could you just like give the listener idea of like how they would hire you? Like you said, they do like events, but you also do like personals. I'll just let you.
So my main platform right now is through Instagram. So my username, what you would search would be linked by, which is only an X. So LinkedxKelsie, and Kelsie spelled IE, not EY. And so that's how you'd find me. And there's information on there. But yeah, basically there's ways to like book individual appointments. They're out of my home. And then there's opportunities to book like, events, like evening events where you had 5 to 10 people, and I would come to you and make a whole night out of it. Super fun. What girl doesn't want to have a fun girls' night in? Eventually guys' night in.
Very cool. Well, all of her links will be in the YouTube description, and probably in like our Instagram post as well. So Kelsie, thank you so much for coming onto the Jesus and a Dream podcast.
Thanks,
we
guys.
will watch your career with great interest, and that's a Star Wars quote.
Good.
For all of our Star Wars fans out there. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.